Hey guys, it's Adam from LUCIDPIXUL. A little while back I was surfing the internet and I happened upon the videos by the YouTuber BonfireVN, who produces these incredible detailed close-up videos of a lot of Elden Ring creatures and bosses and that kind of stuff. And I immediately started to binge on his videos for several reasons that might be very obvious to a lot of you if you follow my channel. But to give you a little bit of background if you're new to my channel, I'm an art teacher, a fantasy illustrator, a creature designer who is heavily inspired and heavily involved in the whole Souls series and the Souls scene. I even just finished recording an audiobook for the book You Died, a Bible for Souls fans and stuff like that. So I'm very deeply involved in this, and this has a very big influence on my artistic style and my teaching style as well. So being able to see these creatures and models and designs very, very close up in meticulous detail wasn't only binge-worthy for me, but I got very excited with these videos as a teaching and a learning tool. So I reached out to BonfireVN directly and I said, would you mind if I make videos where from an artistic perspective, just analyzing it, both to promote his stuff, but also to help educate and entertain you guys, my fellow artists. So that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to start with one of my personal favorite creatures, and I'd like to do a series moving forward. Of course, I won't produce any of these videos unless I have BonfireVN's explicit permission. So thank you to BonfireVN for, number one, producing these amazing videos. Go check it out. Go subscribe. He's gained a lot of popularity very quickly. And let's have a look. First official jump scare that I remember, a real jump scare that got me when I was playing Elden Ring. This is from the expansion, from Shadow of the Erdtree, and probably one of my all-time favorite characters in Souls games. That's why I wanted to start with this one. And if you know my art style, this is very, very reminiscent of the type of stuff that I like to draw, the type of creatures I like to design myself. And you can check it out. I've got countless videos where I do these kinds of artwork where you can watch time lapses on my channel. The Aging Untouchable, also known internally as Huzuki. I guess that's internally in From Software. So let's get a close-up. And the level of detail on this is insane. I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to grab a screen grab over here. And one of the things I found particularly interesting right off the bat was how From Software, how the artists and the animators created a sense of otherworldly in this creature. And I believe it starts with movement, with balance. Pay attention if you're new to art and you're drawing characters and stuff like that. A little quick art tip is, generally speaking, and this is something I learned in animation originally, is generally speaking, your center of balance is going to be located directly below the head. So the head, if I drew a straight line going straight down, the head should be located directly above. Like, I mean, you could draw a ruler line down at the center of balance. So in this particular case, because the head is directly located between the 2 feet, you assume visually that the center of balance is being shared between both feet. But if I backpedal and we shift the weight over to 1 foot, like this, so let's say the spine is slightly tilted and the person's leaning on 1 foot like this. Let's say somebody's doing that. Now we know by this elevated hip that the weight is on that hip, meaning all of the weight or most of the weight of the body has been shifted over to 1 foot, in which case, to find out where that foot lands, I'm going to draw a straight line going straight down from the head, and the foot should land here. The second foot, I can do anything. I can do a yoga pose if I want with the other one, because now we know that the weight is over this foot, okay? Or I just place it in a more relaxed position. You can see how this feels balanced as a result of it. If I take this, let's say if I backpedal, if I knock the balance off slightly and I put the foot here, you can see that it's not directly under the head, and I was to try to do that same yoga pose, that pose would feel like he's going to tip over, doesn't it? Which is physically true. Get up and do the same thing, and you're going to notice when you stand up, your feet or foot should be directly located over that center of balance. Now in the case of the Huzuki, in the case of the Aging Untouchable, look what they've done. He's got this big hulking head, which makes him very front forward, especially since he's got this hunched back. And he's got these tiny little dainty little feet. He's completely off balance. I mean, everything is telling us that he should fall forward, but he doesn't. He maintains this balance. Not only that, but he's got a great amount of agility. He moves extremely quickly for something that's so frail looking, isn't it? Somebody so top heavy. So that in and of itself is evoking this sense of otherworldly. Pay attention to that as an artistic lesson. I find it very, very interesting. I like the fact that the effects are modest. Look at that. Notice how they're very detailed. There are many layers to this. There's the particle effects, there's the smoke effects shooting up. There's kind of like this billowing smoke around his feet. There's a lot of effects going on, but notice how they're very low key. They're not over blingy, they're not over flashy with a lot of glowing bits to it. And I find that a general thing that From Software does artistically is that they really control their effects, their bling in their game. They don't overdo it too quickly. So you feel the effect, but it feels modest. But then if you go up against a big dragon like Placidusax or something like that, you get the big grand effect. So you get that real excitement. You haven't been numbed by too many glowing effects throughout the game. So I find that they manage it extremely well, but you can see the amount of work and detail that they've put into creating this effect. Notice as well, something very important is that this is one of the reasons why animators draw very well, or just studying animation, practicing some things in animation is very worthwhile, because when things move, your perspective of them change. You're not just drawing a pose, you're drawing an action, right? And the act of drawing an action or feeling an energy moving can help with your artistic decisions. So in this particular case, the aging untouchable he's starting to well up, because you don't know what he's going to well up for. The first time you see him, you're just walking and he's just this little thing sitting in the middle of a watery path, and you're like, what is that? And then he pops up right in front of your face. He's welling up to do this big jump scare that you don't see coming. So it's a welling up thing, and as he is, as this wind and turbulence is starting to push up, you're seeing these particles coming off of him because he's aging, he's decaying, he's falling apart. He's like a dried tree, and there's all these particles flying off of him. So you can see that the particles aren't just there to look cool. The particles are there to tell a story as well. There's a story behind these effects. Really, really interesting. We're going to get a bit more of a close-up, probably. A couple of different angles. Okay. Right off the bat, I was watching a video by Fowler, one of my all-time favorite YouTubers. Check him out right over here. Love his videos. And Fowler, Cynics, Clint, Cearley, Ahmed Aldoori, a lot of these different artists have a certain, they're very disciplined when it comes to shape and detail. And I was watching one of Hardy's videos recently. He was doing a dragon illustration, and he was talking about how when you're doing design, be careful not to over detail things. Don't go overboard with it. And that is a very important piece of information for artists. We tend to want to just decorate the crap out of everything. That said, there is an exception to that rule. And I think that Miyazaki's designs and how I'm influenced by Miyazaki's designs call for over design, call for too much details on top of details, and the rotting flesh and the wrinkled skin and the ribs coming out and the frayed feathered bits of fabric and all of these vines and the hair sticking out. This over design gives it, to me, philosophically and from a design perspective, gives it this disconnection with aesthetics, that it's not trying to be pretty, it's trying to be believable, it's trying to be natural. It's like the natural world. When you go to these ruins, there's vines growing all over the place and spider webs all over the place. It gives it this ancient energy to it, doesn't it? And this is something that I noticed in my own work. I always felt that I could push detail further, and just go deeper and deeper into this. It's one of the reasons why I highly recommend checking out the videos by Anthony Jones from Robotpencil. He's fantastic at teaching how to achieve a high level of detail very quickly, efficiently. And it's something that I've studied and learned from as well. So just a little philosophical thing to take into consideration. Are you trying to create designs that are balanced and easy on the eyes, like Fowler's videos? like his designs, which I find just absolute eye candy, or are you pushing that barrier a little bit further and going a bit more detailed? Another example would be Zdzisław Beksiński, a Polish artist that I love. He would go just crazy into detail, albeit he does have control of that detail. So just take note. Let's keep watching. Look at that detail. It's incredible. Here's something really interesting too. Let's take a screenshot of this. And this is going to be a little bit of a tip into what we're going to see moving forward, okay? If you look here, the artist, whoever designed this, whoever did the original illustration and or the 3D modeler who modeled this, had a deep knowledge of human anatomy, has a deep knowledge of anatomy, and you're going to see this more and more as we move forward. These aren't just random shapes in a humanoid body form. No, this is anatomically accurate in a lot of cases. But one detail that I thought interesting from this angle, we have the head over here, but one detail that was really interesting was this, which is very carefully placed. It's kind of like the stem of this head bulb that we have over here. And at the base of it, right over here, is exactly where the first vertebrae, or the last vertebrae of your thoracic or your rib spine is. T1, essentially, the first thoracic vertebrae. And that one tends to bulge a little bit because it's right there at the separation between where the trapezius muscles, because you have the trapezius that come from the neck, and then they come down between the shoulder blades. And there's a separation, which is very often when you're looking at especially if you're looking at somebody who's muscular from the back, you're going to notice this kind of diamond shape right at the base of the neck. That's exactly where the artist decided to place this bulb, kind of at the root of this growth that comes across the head. Let's stop here for a sec. Just have a look at the, here, let's grab a screenshot. Look at how many layers of detail that go into this. We have the original, which is going to be deconstructed in a bit, this kind of base glowing bit over here. Then we have the outer layer of thick vines that grow around and create these kind of lanterns hanging off, a detail I absolutely adore. And these thick horsehairs, these very wiry, thick, opaque horsehairs that kind of come off of it. This is inspired by so many different bits. And on top of that, we have this kind of hive, kind of holes in here, which probably triggers a little bit of that tryptophobia, that fear of holes thing, right? So there's a lot of, and look, all within there, we've got all these extra layers, and we've got all this discoloration and the veins in the eyeballs. This is just an NPC. Most of this stuff we're never going to be able to see close up because we'll be dead by the time we see it close up. If this thing actually gets to you, you're usually dead. So that attention to detail is so respected, despite the fact that we don't necessarily get to see this in game because it moves so quickly. It's just a little moment of appreciation there. Here's something else. Let's backpedal a little bit. I wanted to show those hands again. Okay, I love this as well. And this actually makes me think a lot of Anthony Jones. He does a lot of creatures with these little hands too, especially like the intellectual ones. This is a brain creature. Its power is in its telekinesis, that it can basically drain your soul through its eyes and stuff like that. It does not need physical strength. It uses magic instead. So these small little hands and these small little feet is a physical adaptation to a big brain. Physical strength is not what makes it so threatening. It's mental strength. It's telekinesis. Okay, so now we're starting to see the finer details, how it's broken down in the lower layers, and you can see that at the foundation of this model is probably the foundation of the artist's design. How they started with this simpler foundation and built on top of it. Exactly how I do my drawings. I always start with this very simple, unremarkable base, kind of like the foundation of a drawing, and then I build on top of it and build on top of it until it becomes something a lot more interesting. And if you look here, one of the things I found particularly interesting was this. These kind of tumorous growths around the neck, as they kind of like, or almost maybe tumorous growths, or maybe eyeballs that haven't yet been regurgitated through the neck into this head thing, almost like the growth of a bulb of a flower that'll eventually become an eyeball. I found this detail particularly unsettling, but very clever artistically. Notice that as well. If I backpedal, I'm going to freeze frame on that. You notice when it does this kind of emote. Notice how, if you look at the neck, there's this claw shape that kind of grows out of the side of the neck. It kind of, and it settles in when he relaxes. This is when he's doing his kind of his conjuring effect. Close up of all the eyeballs. So now you can see there's an extra layer of detail added on top of this with the fabric and stuff. The main eyeball. I guess we have the foundational main eyeball. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the artist started with just that one eyeball and then decided to make a big lantern of eyeballs out of it after. But you can see there's a multi-layered process to building it. This isn't only something valuable for 3D modelers who want to build this stuff, but artists who are drawing. You start with a foundation and you build on top of it. It's a powerful tool because it teaches you that you can go further and further and further with the design. It's not about nailing it on the first shot. It's about building it, sculpting it into something more interesting. It's one of the fun things about creature design. This music reminds me a little bit of World of Warcraft. When you die, you know, when you're in your spirit form, that kind of ghostly chants reminds me of that a bit. Now we're getting a closer up view of the neck and the shoulders, these pustules. You're going to notice as well the incredible detail in the arms, the veins, the wrinkly skin, which is kind of a mix between human anatomy and tree bark. There's kind of this adaptation of these two different things together. And we're going to get more into anatomy in a second because there's a lot of that going on. But you can see this kind of like, there's this kind of hybrid tree, because the halig tree type of vines and roots, and human vines and roots. They're playing on both of them as design elements, which I think is very clever. It also shows the expertise of the artist here. See, on these tiny little dainty feet, on his little dainty toes leaning forward, just to show that he's actually being lifted off of the ground by the head. The head is levitating. See? So it's not a weight pulling him down, it's actually lifting him up, and his feet are just dragging in the dirt behind him. Okay. Let's have a look at this. Just to explain something to a lot of artists. If you want to get into things like creature design and character design, stuff like that, anatomy, human anatomy, mammal anatomy, anatomy in general is a hugely valuable tool. This is one of the reasons why it's one of the subjects I love teaching the most. Anatomy is a very, very fun topic. You might look at this and just say, oh, I can just see kind of like these lines coming down the back of the legs and stuff like that. And there's these little design elements. This is all based off of accurate human anatomy. Okay? So it's not something to be taken for granted. The artist who put this together wanted to make this feel believable. It's not realistic, it's believable. So if we look here, we have the semitendinosus and the biceps femoris in the back. You can see how they wrap around the condyles of the femur over there. And here we have the gastrocnemius muscle, which is a little bit wrinkled. Here we can see the gluteus muscles, the gluteus maximus and medius. They come down. We have the TFL. Here we have an indication of the sacrum in the back. We even have a tiny little bit of a coccyx bone. You're going to see when I get rid of the green line. You can see how the intergluteal cleft, or the butt crack, is accurately drawn here as well. See? All of the anatomy is there. This is accurate anatomy. This is not something to be taken for granted. We have the elbow, the olecranon, and we can have the extensors and the flexors, but he's got very, very skinny arms, so he doesn't have big buff arms there. They're just these little stringy muscles because, again, he's an intellectual character. He's probably a chess champion. There you go. Maybe this is what Hans Niemann would turn into if he turned into a creature. And if you're a chess player, you'll know, you'll have a good laugh at that. Let's keep watching. Here. You can see further up. We can see the insertion. If we go up a little bit more, we can see his latissimus muscles inserting into the back. Here's a little bit of his obliques over here. All of this is accurate anatomy. And once you get around this point, it starts to adapt. It starts to slowly morph into creature-esque vines and stuff like that. So there's a certain point where you can see up halfway up the back where the artist decided, now I'm going to start morphing this into tree vines. Done in a very elegant and clever way. You wouldn't even notice it unless you were paying close attention. Unless BonfireVN had produced these videos in the first place. Here. Now, it's not necessarily the best angle, but here we can see. Here's the shoulder blades, the scapula. We can see the deltoid. We can see the tricep going into the back of the elbow over here. We can see the brachioradialis a little bit of the bicep over here. See? Now, here's a bit of an adaptation. Over here as we're starting to get bulbous, like that. But I can even see the infraspinatus, the teres major muscle underneath here, the shoulder blade muscles. All of that anatomy is there. This is the kind of stuff that I absolutely love. So once you get a kind of a comfort, and you can see here where the bulging first vertebrae, right there at the first vertebrae, the artist who drew this and designed this and the artist who modeled this were well aware of what they were doing. This is not accidental. These are all very strategic design choices. Right there at the base of the neck, you can see that. Here's another thing too. Eyeball anatomy, which is not something I know a whole lot of just yet, but I was looking it up recently. These muscles are real. You have muscles all around the eye, and they actually don't, and also going around. So when you're tilting your head, there's muscles that actually reorient your eyes a little bit sideways as well when you tilt your head. But all of these muscles, these are all accurate eye muscles, which is really cool as well. That was freaking cool. I think one of the last little details that I thought particularly interesting was the breathing animation and the asthmatic whistling of the chest, that like that. It feels very asthmatic, and even the way it kind of, you can tell by it's kind of heaving in the chest, trying to take in a lot of air, either because it had breathing issues, because it's got a tiny little rib cage and this heavy head that's kind of weighing down on it, just to give it that extra little bit of creepiness. And to give off a sense of frailty, because I used to have a lot of asthma growing up and stuff like that when I was a kid, and when you have it, you really feel worn out very quickly from using all those muscles to try to take in air. So hopefully you enjoyed this little breakdown. I want to do a whole series of these. Again, a huge thank you to BonfireVN for making this video in the first place. I think it's absolutely fantastic. So valuable for us as artists, and hopefully inspiring for you as artists to get out there and push yourself artistically and learn new cool things to help to up your game. And if you like this, let me know with a like. Leave a comment below if you enjoyed it and you want me to do more of these. I will happily do a bunch of these. They're so much fun. And yeah, happy painting. Take care.